Every morning, Margaret laces her walking shoes, scribbles a note of gratitude, and smiles at the sunrise. A vibrant woman of 72, living proof that strength and joy only deepen with age. Yet behind her vitality lies one simple truth: what she doesn't eat matters just as much as what she embraces. Could hidden breakfast habits be stealing your energy and clarity? Today we uncover 6 surprising foods, starting with one you likely had this week, that deserve a second look. Processed breakfast pastries, the silent thieves of mental clarity. Margaret's shift from sugary cereals to wholesome, nourishing breakfasts marked the beginning of a deeper transformation, not just physically, but emotionally. Choosing real food made her mornings steadier and her mind clearer. She no longer felt trapped by blood sugar swings or emotional crashes that once stole her confidence. This foundation of mindful eating sparked a powerful realization. If one hidden food could affect her so deeply, what else had been quietly undermining her well-being? Fueled by her newfound energy and curiosity, Margaret turned her attention to another common indulgence, one that had long held a sentimental place in her morning routine. For years, Margaret had loved starting her mornings with a warm, sweet pastry, a buttery croissant, a frosted Danish, or a sticky cinnamon roll. It was a small, affordable luxury she allowed herself, often enjoyed while flipping through the morning newspaper or chatting with neighbors at the local cafe. What she didn't realize was that these breakfast treats were doing far more harm than she could see. Pastries are a triple threat, loaded with saturated fats, artificial preservatives, and refined sugars. They quietly attack the body's natural defenses, particularly the brain. Research Margaret came across revealed a sobering truth: diets high in processed sugars and fats are directly linked to cognitive decline in older adults. Frequent consumption of pastries wasn't just about adding a few extra pounds, it was slowly impairing memory, focus, and emotional balance. The brain's delicate blood vessels were being strained by the constant inflammation and oxidative stress triggered by these foods. When Margaret read that regularly eating processed breakfast pastries could increase the risk of dementia, she knew this was no longer about preference. It was about protecting the life she had worked so hard to build. Giving up pastries wasn't as easy as switching cereals. This habit was deeply emotional. Pastries reminded Margaret of happier, simpler times: birthday mornings with her children, cozy weekends with her husband, long-ago holidays when sweet treats marked celebration and love. Every buttery bite was tied to memory and belonging. Parting with this comfort felt like letting go of pieces of her past. At first, Margaret resisted. She tried to reason with herself. It's just a little treat. It's just once in a while. But deep down she knew that occasional treats had quietly become daily rituals, and daily rituals had silently shaped how she felt, thought, and moved through the world. Margaret understood now that honoring her memories didn't have to mean sacrificing her future. She could still cherish the warmth of those moments, without tethering herself to habits that no longer served her best life. Instead of focusing on what she was giving up, Margaret turned her heart toward what she was gaining: a future filled with sharper memories, stronger conversations, and deeper emotional resilience. She started by creating new rituals around her morning meals. Instead of pastries, she prepared warm whole-grain toast with a thin layer of almond butter and fresh strawberries. The textures were different, the flavors were different, but over time the emotional meaning shifted too. Mornings became about nourishment, not nostalgia. Each healthy breakfast was a silent promise to herself: I honor where I've been, and I cherish where I'm going. Margaret even began inviting friends over for breakfast once a month, creating new traditions around healthy foods, laughter, and deep connection. These gatherings didn't feel like a loss, they felt like a beautiful evolution, honoring the spirit of the past, while embracing the wisdom of the present. One of the most profound changes Margaret noticed was how her relationship with joy shifted. She had once believed that indulgence was synonymous with happiness, that sweet pastries equaled sweet mornings. But as her energy stabilized, her mind sharpened, and her moods grew lighter, she realized that true joy wasn't found in sugar rushes or buttery bites. True joy lived in presence, vitality, and emotional freedom. Margaret found happiness in the simple acts of choosing foods that loved her back, in the deep conversations with friends where she stayed fully engaged, in the quiet moments of reading, crafting, or exploring nature without feeling drained or distracted. It wasn't about denying pleasure, it was about redefining it. Every morning, as she brewed her tea and sliced fresh fruit for breakfast, Margaret celebrated the small victories that added up to a life she truly loved living. As Margaret continued her journey, she learned that every small choice was part of a larger tapestry of healing, growth, and joy. Breakfast was no longer just a meal. It was a sacred beginning to every day, a reflection of how deeply she valued her mind, body, and spirit. Her story reminds us that habits we cling to out of comfort can sometimes quietly steal the very comfort we seek. But with courage, compassion, and curiosity, we can rewrite our rituals to serve the vibrant lives we are still blessed to live. Margaret's morning stood as proof. Age was not a thief of joy. Old habits were, and every new day offered the priceless opportunity to choose again. As we move forward, we'll uncover another seemingly healthy breakfast choice, one packed with secret sugars that can quietly sabotage gut health, emotional balance, and even memory itself. Stay close, because this next habit often hides behind a mask of health, and seeing through it is a gift you deserve. Flavored yogurts. The healthy illusion that harms your mind. Margaret's mornings had already begun to feel lighter. Saying goodbye to sugary cereals and processed pastries gave her back a sense of emotional steadiness she hadn't felt in years. Her energy was stronger, her mind clearer. Each small choice became a stepping stone toward a life that felt more vibrant, more intentional. But the deeper she journeyed, the more she realized that true wellness isn't always about the obvious dangers. Sometimes it's about seeing through the illusions. Foods dressed as healthy friends that quietly undermine the very vitality she was reclaiming. And that realization led Margaret to another morning staple she had trusted for decades, without question. For years, Margaret had filled her shopping cart with small tubs of flavored yogurt, peach, vanilla, strawberry swirl, believing she was making a smart, health-conscious choice. After all, yogurt was full of probiotics, right? A simple, wholesome breakfast option she could grab on busy mornings. What she didn't know was that most flavored yogurts, even the ones marketed as low-fat or light, were loaded with added sugars, sometimes as much as a can of soda. Each sweetened spoonful flooded her body with refined sugar, spiking her blood sugar, stressing her gut, and quietly impacting the delicate gut-brain connection that researchers now know is critical for mental clarity and emotional balance. Margaret realized that despite her best intentions, she had been giving her brain a confusing signal every morning, a dose of sugar wrapped in the illusion of health. This wasn't just a nutritional betrayal, it was an emotional one too. She felt disappointed, not just at the food companies who had hidden the truth, but at how easily she had accepted the labels without questioning deeper. The more Margaret learned, the more fascinated she became. Science revealed what she had long felt but never had words for: the health of her gut directly influenced her mind, her mood, even her sense of purpose. Highly processed yogurts, stripped of natural cultures, and flooded with artificial flavors, weren't supporting her at all. They were disrupting the beneficial bacteria in her digestive system, the very bacteria responsible for creating neurotransmitters like serotonin, which govern happiness, focus, and resilience. Every sugary yogurt wasn't just a treat for her taste buds, it was a quiet stressor on her emotional core. Margaret marveled at how deeply connected everything was. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about protecting the sacred relationship between body and mind that defined how she experienced her precious days. Determined to rewrite her mornings, Margaret made a simple but profound shift. She moved away from store-bought flavored yogurts entirely. Instead, she stocked her fridge with plain Greek yogurt, thick, creamy, tangy. At first it tasted almost too sharp compared to the sweet puddings she had been used to, but Margaret wasn't deterred. She remembered her journey with cereal and pastries. Discomfort was just the first sign of transformation. She began crafting her own flavors naturally: a swirl of raw honey, a handful of blueberries, a sprinkle of cinnamon or crushed walnuts. She experimented with textures and tastes, discovering combinations that felt both indulgent and deeply healing. Slowly her palate recalibrated. Foods that once seemed bland became beautiful in their purity. She could taste the realness, the honesty in every bite, and more importantly, she felt it, in her energy, in her peace of mind, in her emotional resilience that carried her through each day with grace. Margaret's shift away from flavored yogurts brought an unexpected emotional gift: a renewed trust in herself. For years, she had unconsciously handed her choices to marketing labels and cultural habits. Now, every spoonful she chose with awareness reinforced a powerful truth: she was in charge of her well-being. She didn't need flashy labels or empty promises. She needed real nourishment and the wisdom to listen to her body's quiet, steady needs. Margaret noticed subtle but powerful changes. Her moods became more even throughout the day. Her sleep grew deeper and more refreshing. Her creativity blossomed in unexpected ways, from painting to writing letters to old friends. With every mindful breakfast, she was building not just better mornings, but a better relationship with herself, one rooted in honesty, patience, and love. This was more than physical health. This was emotional healing, woven into the very fabric of her daily life. Margaret's journey through breakfast had taught her that sometimes the smallest habits hold the greatest power. It wasn't the dramatic transformations that built a joyful, resilient life. It was the quiet decisions, the moments of reflection at the grocery aisle, the thoughtful preparation of a morning meal, the courage to step away from comfort and toward authenticity. Each change was a pebble dropped into a pond, sending ripples outward into every corner of her day. Her energy, her interactions, her dreams for the years still unfolding ahead. And it all began with seeing clearly, with recognizing that not every food that smiles at you from a colorful package is truly smiling at your future. Margaret's story reminds us that thriving after 65 isn't about deprivation, it's about discernment, about choosing to nourish not just the body, but the spirit that carries you through each beautiful, unrepeatable day. As we move forward, we'll uncover another quiet saboteur of morning wellness, a beloved breakfast habit so ordinary that few ever question it, yet one that subtly erodes brain sharpness and emotional strength over time. Stay close, because what we reveal next will help complete the foundation for a life of vibrant, lasting clarity. White bread toast, the familiar comfort that quietly weakens you. With real foods and gut-healing habits now anchoring her mornings, Margaret's life had already blossomed in beautiful ways. The shift away from hidden sugars and empty promises had given her mornings a steadiness she hadn't known in years. Her mind was clearer, her energy more vibrant, her emotions more grounded. Building on this momentum, Margaret became even more curious. If sweet yogurts could hide behind healthy labels, what other seemingly innocent foods might be quietly eroding the strengths she was working so hard to reclaim? It didn't take long for her to find another quiet saboteur, one so ordinary, so woven into daily routines, that it rarely raised alarm: the simple slice of white bread toast. For as long as Margaret could remember, toast had been part of her morning ritual. It was easy, comforting, familiar. The smell alone brought back memories of childhood kitchens and cozy family breakfasts. But what Margaret hadn't realized was that most white breads were stripped of their natural fibers, vitamins, and minerals during processing, leaving behind little more than fast-digesting starch. Each slice sent her blood sugar soaring, triggering the same energy crashes, inflammation, and brain stress that sugary cereals had once caused. Worse still, refined grains have been closely linked to an increased risk of cognitive decline as we age, starving the brain of the steady nourishment it needs to thrive. It wasn't about villainizing bread, it was about recognizing how modern processing had transformed a humble staple into a nutritional shadow of its former self. At first, Margaret resisted the idea that something as simple as her morning toast could be doing harm. It felt almost too small, too innocent to matter. But the deeper she dug into research, the clearer the truth became. Consistent consumption of highly refined grains was quietly contributing to blood vessel damage, reduced brain elasticity, and chronic inflammation, all factors that compounded emotional fragility and memory loss over time. Margaret realized that her breakfast choices were shaping not just her mornings, but her entire future, her conversations, her creativity, her independence. She had fought hard to reclaim her emotional clarity. She wasn't about to let a slice of toast stand in her way. Determined to protect the strengths she had begun to rebuild, Margaret set out to find better options. She explored whole grain breads, dense with seeds, oats, and natural fibers. She discovered sprouted grain loaves, rich in protein and slow-releasing carbohydrates, that fed her energy with gentleness and grace. The transition wasn't instant. Whole grain bread had a heavier, earthier texture. The nutty flavors were different from the airy lightness she was used to. But Margaret understood now that true comfort isn't found in mindless habits. It's found in rituals that honor and uplift the life you are choosing to live. Bit by bit, her taste shifted. She topped hearty slices of whole grain toast with creamy avocado, a sprinkle of hemp seeds, or a spread of almond butter and fresh banana slices. Every morning became a celebration of vitality, rather than a repeat of past conditioning. And with every new choice, Margaret wasn't just nourishing her body, she was deepening her emotional strength and commitment to living purposefully. What surprised Margaret most was how this seemingly small change echoed through her emotional world. Choosing wholesome breads wasn't just about nutrients, it was about reminding herself, every day, that she could change, adapt, and thrive. Even at 72, this growing self-trust began to seep into other areas of her life. She found herself more patient in conversations, more confident when trying new hobbies, more willing to express her needs and dreams without apology. Each slice of sprouted grain toast became a quiet affirmation. You are strong, you are wise, you are still growing. Margaret no longer started her days with a sugar surge and a crash. She started them with steadiness, dignity, and emotional clarity that carried her gently into the adventures of her day. Margaret's evolving breakfast table taught her that familiarity isn't always the same as fulfillment. The foods we reach for out of habit can sometimes reflect old versions of ourselves, versions shaped by convenience, marketing, or a simpler time. But the woman Margaret had become, thoughtful, resilient, joyful, deserved choices that matched her strength. Letting go of white bread toast wasn't about deprivation, it was about stepping fully into her power, choosing foods that loved her back, setting a tone for her mornings and her life that was rooted in authenticity and care. She realized that breakfast wasn't just about feeding the body, it was about feeding the spirit, the deepest, most vibrant parts of herself still unfolding, and every choice mattered, even the ones as small as the bread on her plate. As we continue this journey, we'll soon uncover another set of breakfast foods that feel rich and hearty, but carry silent dangers for memory and heart health alike. Margaret's next discovery shook her, but the solution empowered her even more. Stay close, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Processed breakfast meats, a heavy weight on heart and mind. Having come this far, Margaret had already rewritten the foundation of her mornings. By stepping away from sugar-loaded cereals, processed pastries, flavored yogurts, and white bread, she had reclaimed a steadiness and emotional vitality that radiated through her daily life. Her mind was sharper, her energy more stable, and her sense of purpose more grounded than it had been in years. But there was one final category of hidden harm she needed to confront. A beloved breakfast habit that had quietly burdened both her body and mind for decades. Processed meats like bacon and sausage. Margaret had always associated the smell of sizzling bacon with warmth, comfort, and home. Weekend breakfasts, holiday mornings, family gatherings, bacon was always part of the memory. It felt familiar, safe, even celebratory. But the more she learned, the more Margaret realized that processed meats carried serious risks, especially as she aged. High in saturated fats, sodium, and chemical preservatives, like nitrates and nitrites, these foods increased her risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and even certain cancers. Margaret was struck by one chilling detail. Studies had found that people who consumed processed meats regularly faced a higher risk of memory problems and emotional instability later in life. Every crispy strip wasn't just a small indulgence, it was a quiet attack on the resilience she was working so hard to nurture. Facing the truth about bacon and sausage was painful at first. It wasn't just about taste, it was about nostalgia, tradition, the comfort of rituals built over a lifetime. Margaret knew she didn't want to strip joy from her mornings. She wanted to transform it. She began experimenting with alternatives, grilling fresh turkey slices seasoned with herbs, preparing plant-based sausage patties, made from lentils and spices, pan-frying tofu with a sprinkle of smoked paprika, for a savory breakfast side. At first it felt unfamiliar. The smells were different, the textures weren't quite the same. But what Margaret noticed almost immediately was how her body responded. No heavy sluggishness after breakfast, no creeping feelings of irritability or brain fog by midday. A sense of lightness that stayed with her through the afternoon. Morning meals became less about replicating old comforts and more about celebrating new forms of nourishment and life. With so much already achieved, Margaret felt proud of how far she had come. Her mornings were richer, her days fuller. But there was one last hidden pitfall, lingering in her routine, one that seemed harmless, even virtuous: the morning glass of fruit juice. For decades Margaret had sipped orange juice almost every day, believing it was a healthy habit. After all, wasn't it packed with vitamin C? Weren't commercials filled with smiling families and sunshine? But the truth was harsher. Most commercial fruit juices, even those labeled 100% juice, delivered an enormous dose of sugar, without the fiber needed to slow absorption and protect the body. Drinking juice caused blood sugar spikes, inflammation, and oxidative stress, all silent contributors to brain aging and emotional volatility. What was worse, the lack of fiber meant Margaret's body absorbed the sugar almost instantly, sending her energy and mood on an exhausting roller coaster she hadn't even recognized. Determined not to let one last habit undermine her new vitality, Margaret made a bold change. She stopped buying bottled juices entirely. Instead, she embraced whole fruits, a juicy orange eaten segment by segment, a crisp apple with almond butter, a handful of fresh berries with a sprinkle of cinnamon. The difference was immediate and profound. Rather than flooding her body with a sudden sugar rush, whole fruits offered steady nourishment, rich in vitamins, antioxidants, and fiber. Margaret found that she could still enjoy the bright, refreshing tastes she loved, but now they loved her back. Her mornings became more colorful, more textural, more alive. Every bite was a celebration of wholeness, a reflection of the wholeness she was cultivating within herself. Looking back, Margaret could hardly believe the changes she had woven into her life. What had started as simple curiosity, questioning a few small habits, had blossomed into a complete renewal of her mornings, her energy, and her emotional resilience. By letting go of sugary cereals, processed pastries, flavored yogurts, white bread, processed meats, and juices, she had made space for something far more precious: clarity, strength, and a deeper joy that touched every corner of her life. Her relationships grew richer because she was more present. Her creativity rekindled because she had energy to spare. Her spirit soared because she had proven to herself, day after day, that it's never too late to choose healing. Each breakfast was no longer a rushed, thoughtless ritual. It was a quiet act of self-respect, a declaration of worthiness, a celebration of the life still unfolding beautifully before her. Margaret's journey reminds us that thriving isn't about perfection, it's about awakening, about seeing clearly the hidden choices that shape our days, and gently, courageously choosing better. Every small decision matters, every quiet shift builds momentum, and just like Margaret, each of us holds the power to step into mornings and lives filled with clarity, purpose, and lasting joy. As we step forward, remember the story is still being written, and every nourishing choice you make is a new beautiful line in the life you deserve to live. Processed meats, breaking the chain of silent damage. With these foundational habits in place, Margaret's mornings had transformed into a sacred ritual of nourishment and emotional strength. But as her transformation neared its peak, she understood that true change required seeing through every hidden danger, even the ones most deeply tied to memory and tradition. Processed meats like bacon and sausage were among the hardest foods for Margaret to confront. They carried the comforting echoes of family breakfasts, Sunday gatherings, and celebrations gone by. Yet science revealed a painful truth. Processed meats were not merely indulgent, they were actively harmful, loaded with sodium, saturated fats, and chemical preservatives like nitrates. They quietly increased the risk of heart disease, stroke, and cognitive decline, dangers that grew heavier with each passing year. Margaret realized that while the taste was fleeting, the damage lingered invisibly, quietly undermining her hard-won vitality. Facing this truth, she chose courage over nostalgia. She began experimenting with alternatives: lean turkey slices, plant-based patties, roasted vegetables with savory spices, and slowly built new rituals around foods that supported her sharp mind and open heart. The simple act of letting go of processed meats symbolized a larger victory, honoring her life's future more than its past. Fruit juices, escaping the sweet trap. As her transformation neared its peak, Margaret found herself questioning even the foods she had once considered unquestionably good. Among them was fruit juice, that bright, cheery staple of morning tables everywhere. Margaret had long believed her daily glass of orange juice was a healthy choice, packed with vitamin C and sunshine. But closer investigation revealed another hidden trap. Fruit juices, even 100% natural varieties, stripped away fiber and concentrated sugars into a potent blood sugar spiking cocktail. Without the natural fibers of whole fruit to slow absorption, these sugars raced through Margaret's system, triggering inflammation, destabilizing her energy, and quietly harming the very brain functions she was working so hard to protect. It was a hard realization something that seemed so pure could be so harmful. Determined to rewrite this narrative, Margaret shifted away from bottled juices and embraced whole fruits: apples with skin, oranges peeled by hand, berries bursting with life. She discovered that chewing, savoring, and digesting whole fruits gave her steady energy, emotional balance, and a deeper appreciation for the simple miracles of nature. Every vibrant fruit on her plate became a reminder: true nourishment doesn't come from convenience, it comes from connection. The final steps brought everything full circle for Margaret. She realized that breakfast was never just about food, it was about how she started her days, with presence, care, and respect for the life she was continuing to build. Every choice she made in the quiet of morning sent ripples through the rest of her life. Choosing real nourishment meant choosing clearer conversations, lighter moods, deeper laughter, and a stronger connection to her sense of purpose. Margaret's mornings became an anchor of resilience. She no longer rushed through breakfast or treated it as an afterthought. She crafted it like an artist, with intention, gratitude, and love. Simple bowls of oats, colorful plates of fresh fruit, hearty slices of sprouted grain toast, savory plant-based breakfast creations. They weren't just meals, they were affirmations, declarations that she was still growing, still thriving, still deserving of joy. Margaret's journey showed that the smallest habits, built on truth and care, create the strongest foundations, not just for health, but for happiness and emotional freedom. Margaret's transformation was not born of dramatic overnight changes. It was built, step by step, morning by morning, through the quiet courage to see clearly and choose better. By letting go of sugary cereals, processed pastries, sweetened yogurts, white bread, processed meats, and bottled juices, she had cleared a path to a new life, one where clarity, strength and purpose filled every sunrise. Her story reminds us that change is always possible, that the smallest moments, the moment you reach for one food instead of another, the moment you question an old habit, the moment you nourish instead of numb, are the moments that shape your life. Margaret didn't just change what was on her plate, she changed the story she was telling herself about who she was, and who she could still become. And so can you. The journey doesn't end here. Each new morning offers another beautiful opportunity to honor the vibrant, resilient, joyful spirit that has carried you this far, and will carry you into the brightest chapters still to come. Margaret's journey shows us that every small choice builds a stronger, brighter life. By honoring your mornings, you honor your future. Trust that it's never too late to thrive. Your story is still unfolding, and today is a beautiful chance to nourish your strength, purpose, and joy.